Noah's Ark found again. It seems like every few years someone claims to have found Noah's Ark, usually in Turkey, usually near Mount Ararat, and usually with breathless headlines. In this latest discovery, researchers claim they've again found boat shaped formations buried in a mountainous region known as the Duru Pinar site, and they're hinting that wood samples may date to the time of the biblical flood. Now, scientists have studied this site before. Geologists called it a natural formation. But no matter how often that's said, the hope keeps coming back. Noah's Ark is a story so made up it's comical, but people want it to be real. Why? It's 2025. We have AI, drones, quantum computing, and we're still trying to prove a 500-foot wooden boat once carried two of every animal on Earth, including kangaroos, polar bears, and mosquitoes. But here's the question. Why do we need it to be real? Why do we chase proof of something we already know couldn't have happened? Maybe it was never about the boat. Maybe it was always about the flood, about surviving the storm. Because the world is still flooding with water, with fear, with debt, and we're still chasing boat-shaped hope on far-off mountains. When you strip away the details, the flood story is really about faith, not in a literal boat, but in the belief that somehow we can make it through. Welcome to Around the World of Faith, a space for exploring faith and deconstructing religion. If you've ever looked at religion and thought, wait, what? You're in the right place. Please like and feel free to subscribe or drop a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Thousands of miles from Ararat and even further from ancient Mesopotamia, the Ark has been found in Kentucky off I-75 with RV parking and a food court. Behold Noah's Ark, life-sized, ADA compliant, climate controlled, and gift wrapped in good intentions and Christian fundraising. They say Noah built the original with bare hands, primitive tools, and skeptical sons. This one, cranes, bulldozers, engineers, air conditioning, laminated lumber, steel, concrete, and modern plumbing. And somewhere between chopping his 1,000th tree and wrangling a hippo, Noah had to be thinking, there's got to be a better way. It's part museum, part amusement park, part theological fever dream. You can feed fake animals, walk through Noah's workshop, and ponder how dinosaurs fit on the boat. Dinosaurs? Yes, dinosaurs. The folks behind the Ark Encounter are young Earth creationists. They believe the Earth is about 6,000 years old. Evolution is a myth, and humans and dinosaurs live side by side, like it's an episode of The Flintstones. This isn't faith. It's fan fiction with a construction permit. It has a sprinkler system. Now just think about that for a second. The irony is overflowing. But here's the thing, people love it. It works. Not because it's convincing, but because people want to believe it so badly, they build it themselves. You don't have to believe in Noah to believe in flood stories. Every culture has one. The Sumerians told of Utnapishtim, chosen by the gods to survive a great flood. He built a massive boat and saved life from destruction. His tale appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh, centuries before the Hebrew Bible. In Hindu tradition, a sacred fish warns Manu of an oncoming flood. The fish, an avatar of Vishnu, guides him to safety in a boat. Inside are the seeds of life to start the world again. The Greeks told of Deucalion and Pyrrha, spared from a divine flood meant to cleanse humanity. After the waters recede, they repopulate the earth by casting stones that become people. The Ojibwe speak of a flooded world rebuilt on the back of a great turtle. From this shell rose Turtle Island. In Dreamtime stories from Australia, floods reshape the land and restart creation. Water spirits and serpents carve new paths for life to begin again. These aren't copies of Genesis. They're answers to the same terrifying question: what happens when the water doesn't stop rising? Some myths blame the gods, some focused on survival, others marked the end or the beginning of everything. Not the same story, the same fear told in different voices. Flood myths weren't meant to be literal. Before science, myths helped us survive the unthinkable. So if every culture has a flood story, does that make it true or just human? Let's talk about a tempting idea. If every culture has a flood myth, doesn't that prove one single global flood? It's compelling until you look at time. These stories didn't emerge together. They weren't describing the same event. They arose from different rivers, different oceans, different catastrophes. Some were written, others spoken. Some were about punishment, some survival. They weren't describing one flood. They were describing many. And that matters, because pretending they all describe the same flood erases the human stories behind each one. Then there's the logistical stuff. If there was one global flood, how did kangaroos get back to Australia? How did sloths return to South America? How did freshwater fish survive saltwater? How did native peoples who never heard the Bible tell their own flood stories first? The more you try to make the math work, the faster the boat sinks. But this isn't just debunking, it's deconstructing religion, asking not only if the story is true, but why it was told and what it still means today. Because it was never meant to be real. It was metaphor. And now we've turned it into a museum with animatronic dinosaurs and sprinkler systems. And maybe that's the real loss. We're so busy trying to prove it did or didn't happen that we forget to ask the real question: why was it told in the first place? In 2011, I was living in Thailand when the floods came. At first, it felt like a heavy storm, then a long storm, then the roads disappeared and stayed gone. 6 weeks. Schools shut down, markets moved to rooftops, boats replaced taxis. People even made their own homemade boats out of whatever they could find to float. The water didn't just take over the land, it redefined it. You stopped asking, when will it end? And started asking, what's left when it does? There were no doves, no divine blueprint, no righteous family saving the world, just people, trapped, tired, doing their best not to lose hope. That's when I started thinking about Noah, not the Sunday school version, the metaphor, because the flood, I've seen it, and the ark, that's the part we still need. I don't believe that Noah built a floating zoo or that the entire world was underwater, but I do believe the story matters. Because buried beneath the impossible details is something painfully real. What do we cling to when the waters rise? The flood is chaos, trauma, the moment everything familiar is washed away. And the ark? The ark is hope. Hope that something, anything, might carry you through. A boat, a belief, a person, or a promise. Maybe the ark isn't made of wood. Maybe it's built out of faith. Not in a literal story, but in the chance to begin again. I let go of religion years ago, or maybe it let go of me. And that's where I've lived ever since, in this space of faith after religion, where the search for meaning doesn't end just because belief in the old stories does. I've prayed in monasteries in Thailand, heard the call to prayer in Kuwait, walked through temples of Greek gods, and caves in India filled with Hindu deities. For me, exploring faith has never been about finding the right answer. It's been about stepping into sacred spaces from every tradition and listening to what they have to say. I've watched sacrifices, heard sermons, seen strangers cry in front of statues they believed could save them. In all of it, I've seen interfaith connections, that shared longing for meaning, whether it's expressed through incense in a temple or hymns in a church. Even without belief, I recognize the longing, that need for something bigger, not because it's logical, but because it matters. And I've tried labels: a deist, a skeptic, but none of them quite fit. I don't believe in unicorns on a giant boat, but I still believe in something. Sometimes you have to lose your religion to find your faith. And for me, that something, that faith, is hard to name. It's spirituality beyond religion. The sense of wonder and connection that shows up in a song, a sunrise, or a stranger's kindness. Meaning, connection, the way beauty stops you in mid-sentence, the way grief cracks you open just enough to let the light in. Maybe that's God, maybe not. Maybe it's the strange magic of being human. But it's enough to keep searching, not for proof, but for peace, or for whatever greater truth might still be out there. God, meaning, something sacred we haven't named yet. And if you're still searching, you are not alone. I promise, you are not alone. The flood was never the point. The point is, what's your own ark? What carries you through your own floods? How do you handle them? And who do you become once the waters recede? If you're willing, share it in the comments. Someone else might need to hear it. Thank you.